Imagine this. You command the greatest empire in the Western Hemisphere. 12 million people bow to your name. Your roads stretch 40,000 kilometers across mountains, deserts, and jungles. Your armies number in the hundreds of thousands. And then, 168 men show up. 168 men, armed with horses, steel swords, and guns. Weapons your soldiers have never seen before. And within just 2 years, your entire empire is gone. Your emperor is dead. Your gold is melted down into Spanish coins. And your civilization, thousands of years in the making, is reduced to rubble. This isn't fiction. This actually happened. And the man who did it was Francisco Pizarro, an illiterate, illegitimate Spanish soldier who pulled off the most audacious, ruthless, and shocking conquest in all of human history. Today, we're going to break down exactly how he did it. And trust me, the truth is even more insane than the legend. Welcome back to the channel. If you're new here, we cover the most dramatic, world-changing moments in history, the kind they didn't teach you in school. Today's story takes us to 16th century South America, a world of gold-filled temples, divine emperors, and a military empire that dominated an entire continent. And then a single man, driven by greed, ambition, and zero moral limits, tore it all apart. This is the story of how Francisco Pizarro destroyed the Inca Empire. Let's go. Before we talk about its destruction, we need to understand what was actually destroyed. The Inca Empire, known as Tawantinsuyu, meaning the Four Regions, was by every measure a marvel of human civilization. At its height in the early 1500s, it was the largest empire in the pre-Columbian Americas, stretching from modern-day Colombia all the way down to Chile. It covered over 4,000 kilometers of mountain terrain and was home to an estimated 12 million people. They built suspension bridges over raging rivers. They carved roads into the sides of sheer mountain cliffs. They ran a communication system using runners called chasquis, who could relay a message from one end of the empire to the other in just days. They had no writing system, yet they governed complex taxation, census records, and military logistics using a system of knotted strings called quipus. The Inca emperor, the Sapa Inca, was considered a living god, a son of the sun. His word was absolute law. In short, this was not a weak civilization. This was a superpower. So how on earth did 168 men bring it down? The destruction of the Inca Empire actually began before Pizarro ever set foot in South America. In the 1520s, a catastrophic wave of smallpox, a European disease carried south through trade networks, swept through the Inca Empire. The Inca people had absolutely no immunity to it. It moved faster than any army. Entire villages were wiped out overnight. Estimates suggest that smallpox may have killed over 200,000 people before the Spanish even arrived. But here's where it gets truly devastating. Smallpox didn't just kill commoners, it killed the emperor. In 1527, the reigning Sapa Inca, Huayna Capac, died from the disease, along with his chosen heir. This created a catastrophic power vacuum at the very top of the empire. With no clear successor, two of his sons, Huáscar in the south and Atahualpa in the north, both claimed the throne. The stage was set for a civil war that would rip the empire apart from the inside, just in time for Pizarro to walk through the door. The civil war between Huáscar and Atahualpa lasted nearly 5 brutal years, from around 1529 to 1532. It was vicious, total war, battles fought across thousands of kilometers of mountain terrain, with both sides committing horrific massacres. Atahualpa ultimately proved to be the stronger military leader. His generals, brilliant commanders named Quizquiz and Chalcuchimac, led armies of over 100,000 men and crushed Huascar's forces in decisive battles at Chimborazo and Quipaipan. By 1532, Huascar was captured. Atahualpa had won, but the empire was utterly exhausted. Hundreds of thousands were dead. The loyalty of many nobles was shattered. The communication networks were disrupted. The political structure was in chaos. And Atahualpa, fresh from victory, was resting in the city of Cajamarca, confident, celebrations unfinished, when word reached him of strange, pale men with wool on their faces, marching toward him from the coast. He was not worried. He had just defeated his brother with an army of 80,000. What threat could a few hundred foreigners possibly pose? He was about to find out. Francisco Pizarro was born around 1478 in Trujillo, Spain, the illegitimate son of a soldier, raised in poverty, never taught to read or write. He arrived in the Americas in 1502 and spent decades in the Caribbean and Panama scraping for fortune and reputation. By the 1520s, rumors of a vast golden empire to the south were everywhere. Pizarro was obsessed. He organized 2 failed expeditions before finally returning to Spain to get official authorization from King Charles V for a 3rd attempt. In 1531, he set sail with just 168 soldiers and 62 horses. That's it. He was walking into a continent with millions of people and armies, hundreds of thousands strong. But Pizarro had something the Inca didn't: gunpowder, steel armor, horses, which the Inca had never seen. Most importantly, ruthless, calculating strategy. On November 16, 1532, Pizarro's forces entered the city of Cajamarca and laid a trap. He invited Emperor Atahualpa, surrounded by thousands of his attendants and soldiers, to a meeting in the city square, framing it as a diplomatic feast in the emperor's honor. Atahualpa arrived in full imperial splendor, carried on a golden litter, adorned in jewels, attended by thousands of unarmed courtiers. He believed the meeting was a formality, a show of submission from these bizarre strangers. A Spanish priest named Valverde approached the emperor and presented him with a Bible, demanding he accept Christianity and submit to the Spanish king. Atahualpa, confused and insulted, reportedly threw the book to the ground. That was Pizarro's signal. Hidden cannons opened fire. Spanish cavalry charged out of the surrounding buildings. Soldiers with steel swords hacked through the panicking crowd. In just a few hours, Pizarro's troops massacred thousands of Inca soldiers and attendants, and captured Atahualpa himself. The greatest emperor in the Western Hemisphere was now a prisoner, and he'd walked into the trap himself. Here's where it gets even darker. Atahualpa, desperate to survive, offered Pizarro the most extraordinary ransom in history. He would fill an entire room, a room measuring approximately 6.7 meters long by 5.2 meters wide, completely full of gold, up to a height of over 2 meters, and he would fill 2 more rooms with silver. Pizarro agreed. Over the following months, Inca subjects from across the empire brought gold and silver treasures, ripping sacred decorations from temples, melting down ceremonial objects to fill the ransom rooms. The total was worth an estimated $100 million in today's money. Pizarro took all of it, and then he had Atahualpa executed anyway. On August 29th, 1533, Atahualpa was strangled after being coerced at the last moment to convert to Christianity, which changed his execution from burning at the stake to strangulation. A promise broken, an emperor murdered, an empire headless. With Atahualpa dead, Pizarro marched on Cusco, the sacred capital of the Inca Empire, the city the Inca called the navel of the world. In November 1533, Pizarro's forces took the city. He installed a puppet Inca ruler to maintain a facade of legitimacy while systematically stripping the empire of its gold, its leadership, and its identity. There were attempts at resistance, most notably the rebellion led by Manco Inca in 1536, which nearly drove the Spanish out. But without unified leadership, without the communication networks, and still weakened by disease and civil war, the resistance ultimately failed. The Spanish imposed their laws, their religion, and their language. The forced labor system they introduced, called the mita, worked indigenous people to death in gold and silver mines. The population of the Andes, estimated at 12 million before the conquest, had collapsed to fewer than 1 million within a century. The Inca Empire was gone. So how did 168 men destroy an empire of millions? The answer is, they didn't do it alone. Smallpox arrived first. The Civil War arrived second. Pizarro simply walked into the wreckage and was cold, calculating, and brutal enough to exploit every single crack. The fall of the Inca Empire is not just a story of military conquest. It's a story about how disease, division, and overconfidence can bring down even the mightiest civilization in the world. And it's a story we should never forget. If you found this video fascinating, smash that like button and subscribe. We cover stories exactly like this every week. Drop in the comments. Do you think the Inca could have survived if the Civil War hadn't happened? I want to know what you think. See you in the next one.